Hi, my name is Michael Coachell. I'm a software developer. Yeah, I'm a big fan of JavaScript, TypeScript, React, all that kind of stuff. And with Create React App becoming deprecated, I figured maybe it's okay to start adding more options. But this is more of a full stack thing that I'm talking about than that. But yeah, I'll just get into this. So this was the original title of the presentation, but I have since changed the meaning of things. And now Springboard is more of a general purpose full stack React framework. And Jam Tools was what I was thinking of calling my application, but right now that is a plugin for Springboard, which provides a bunch of MIDI abstractions for your app. So why am I doing this presentation? Presentations at dev meetups are awesome. And as Tony was saying, it's been a while since there's been some at this meetup due to the pandemic a few years ago. So trying to bring it back. And I want to see, selfishly want to see more, so hopefully this can inspire. So get up here and present something you're passionate about. All right, in case you're interested in how to get involved, I made a Discord server for this, and here's the repository. So first, just in case somebody in the audience doesn't fully understand what MIDI is, it stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and it was basically a way for electronic keyboards and such to be able to communicate with each other. Like, oh boy. Hopefully it comes back on. I stepped on the HDMI cord. So it was all of the different synthesizer producers all had their own proprietary thing to communicate with their own devices, and then this was the biggest improvement that made it so they could communicate to each other, the different companies' devices. And in my own words, I would describe it as everything you can do with electronic keyboards and software except for actually producing audio. So certain programs and hardware, they use this MIDI information to create sound from human expression on the devices. And MIDI as a protocol is pretty useful because you can communicate between programs, between devices. It could actually be used for a lot of things that don't have to do with music, so it's pretty useful. So the history of this project, the original premise is to make jam sessions better. So when you're playing music with people, especially like when you're improvising, you might want to change things up over time, and it's really hard to do that unless you're like a jazz musician or something. So the application is mainly supposed to help convey musical ideas, or maybe something like let's slow down, or maybe quieter new chord progressions and such. So that's the general premise. And for my own usage, I want it to work standalone in the browser, but it also needs to have that multiplayer context. So that kind of laid the requirement foundation down, where it's got to be very isomorphic and share a lot of code between Node and the browser. I'm going to just show some, so I guess I'll just describe it first. So the way that the code was laid out the last time I tried to write this, there was the MIDI, oh boy. Huh. I wonder if I can, maybe this will work. Nope. Okay, so This is the centralized configuration in that version of the program, where all of the names of the MIDI devices are hard-coded in the repo. So I was basically just writing this for myself. I can't share this with people unless they compile it themselves or they happen to have the same MIDI instruments and they want the same configuration and such. And so this shared folder is where most of this code was at, most of the core functionality. And so there's this, this is just one of the modes, progression mode. And if I go into this folder, you can see there's a parallel structure here. So it's like, okay, I want to change something about this. Okay, now I got to go all the way over here. And they're just like compiled separately. Even though the web app was referencing this stuff so it can run standalone, it's just, it didn't feel right. It's like, it was mostly class-based the first time around. Or I guess it's not really it's the last time around. I've tried to write this several times, but yeah, it's very much like each mode is on your own. There's no really standard for any of the things to follow. And then in this sort of main class, you have these like, is it this mode right now? Is it this mode? It was basically chaos and lots of bloat in this file describing stuff that has to do with multiple modes. So yeah, it just didn't scale. That's the important part. So yeah, it was not cohesive. I'd say that's a good way to, like each feature, because it's supposed to, I want to be able to write like 30 features or more. I got a lot of ideas and I want them to all be in the same program, and it just didn't work. With the little time that I had to spend on that kind of stuff, I just didn't make a lot of progress. So with this new way that I'm doing things, this was when I first started this time around. I was also doing a more class-based approach. So there's this concept of macros, which I'll get into in a second, that makes it working with MIDI stuff a lot easier. So basically, implicitly, you have this thing connected, this property, macro config, and then a separate module. The macro module will then notice that when the program's initializing and then populate it with, and this is not the current code, by the way. These comments aren't there, but not that that really matters. And then this is like macros was actually being overwritten by the macro module on purpose. And then this is just like an identity function that lets TypeScript know that you have those macros based on your macro config. And then you can do things like, I haven't looked at this particular file in a while. But the point is you could access the macros and do stuff without really like thinking about how MIDI works. This is the more newer thing that I have. So this is more function-based approach. So there's this sort of global thing that, I mean, it's actually just like like it just captures the function calls, and then the main engine it kind of gets proxied over there. The whole point is to not have to know how that works. I mean, you probably should know how the framework works that you're using, but and you can. It's not too complicated, but so right here I'm creating two states to show two different sliders. And then I'm this method chaining here. It's gotten a lot better since I wrote this particular file. Probably should have chosen a different one. Maybe I'll show a different one in a second. But basically, imagine this just says module API.create macro. So you can, with very little code, get some MIDI stuff going on. Notice that I'm not putting any MIDI instrument names in this file. So this is feature level code here. So as an application developer, this is the kind of code that you would write. So we have states being created, which will be synchronized across all the browsers that are connected. It's supposed to feel like React.useState hook in a way. Then creating these macros, saying what we want the macros to do, and then register route is the way that you can create different routes using the framework, so you can actually render your components that you want. So then we have this state .use state. You can I wonder if you could. Okay. So I'm gonna basically there's like on this sort of state supervisor, there's get state, set state, and use state. The use state is just a helper hook to allow you to have the information inside of your components easier. So I just browsing through the code, that's what's going on with that. So I described what macros were, but basically it just makes it so as a developer you don't have to think about MIDI instruments that are plugged in, and it allows the user to configure those instead. So with no additional code, the user can configure them as they would like to. So I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts or happen to be, or if you've listened to the Syntax FM podcast. It's a web development podcast. Recommend checking it out. They stay up to date on latest things going on, and yeah, it's pretty fun, I'd say. So they had an idea about using a MIDI slider to raise their hand while they're recording the podcast, and I used that as a just like a test for being like, how much code does it take with the framework to implement that feature? And so here's basically a prototype of that feature. And notice this is not on yet, and now it is, and the program will, the program captures that you turn that on. And so, I mean, this is pretty small. But look, I'm going through this as a user, and I'm assigning this control on this MIDI controller, and assigning this other control. Whoops. Good old in browser alerts. So now I can use the MIDI sliders to change where the hands are. And one of the reasons why I wanted to implement this, I guess one thing that it helped with is, like, it's technically not fully what Scott from the podcast was talking about. He wants to move a hardware hand or something like that. And I wanted to make it so the code written for this gets him almost there if he wanted to, because he said he wanted to write that. So I was like, how can I structure the framework in a way so that he can take that and know exactly where to change, and is like sort of happy with how, like, the developer experience of that. So that was when I went from the declarative approach to the imperative approach. So here's the state supervisor thing I was talking about. So it's from your application level code, you declare what your states, whether you want to be persistent or shared, or like not persistent. It gives you an observable that's synchronized across all the devices, and the React hook that I was showing you before that allows you to easily put that state inside of your components. And for the different kinds of states you can create right now, there's the shared state, which is what I was using for that slider. There's the persistent state, which stores it in a key value store. That's also synchronized. And the persistent state The way that it works, it allows you to iterate on your features without having to do things like think about your database schema or something like that. It kind of just on the fly will help you get you across the finish line with those things. And then there's the user agent state, which depending on the deployment context, it'll be local storage, or in hopefully in the near future mobile app context, it'll just use like the mobile app's local storage. So that's not shared among the different browsers. So if it's like the user wants to see, if they're jamming, they want to see a guitar fretboard to show the notes, or a piano, or they want to see sharps instead of flats, for instance, for the notes. And so the two deployment models right now, it's the multiplayer deployment model and the single player. You notice the single player is a lot simpler. That's kind of the point, because it's just one entity involved. So from start to finish, like let's say the user clicks something in the UI, like I was clicking the in the form to start capturing the MIDI slider configuration. That gets proxied to the Maestro device, which is basically the server in a way, but it's actually deployed as a sidecar to the WebSocket server, so that it's a separate process and can be as like MIDI focused as possible. And so like in order, it'll handle the RPC action and then broadcast the state and then return a response, which may have an error message or a success message. So it's the same application code in your code base, and you can deploy it two different ways, and it just works. So latency sensitive versus latency insensitive actions. So something like pressing down a note on a keyboard, you want the sound to, or whatever's processing that MIDI information, you want that to be as immediate as possible. But then something like a UI action, that's going to go over the network, potentially be on a different device. So you have to write your code in a way where you know that those, if it's going through the UI, you don't want those to be things that that you want to be immediate. So it's in the framework very clearly, like anything that has to do with macros is assumed to be instantaneous, and things for the UI should be assumed to be not instantaneous. Just real quick, I'm using Raspberry Pi as part of my deployment process, and I just want to recommend checking out Mender.io. A lot of IoT deployment platforms are container-based. That didn't work out for my use case because I got to access the I/O devices directly. Even if you don't use, even if you're not using any IoT solution, I recommend it. Just checking it out. So future plans, the state management right now, it's basically like you're just storing a JSON blob in a cell in a database row or in the key value store. So if you have like 1 million records, that's just not going to scale. And so I'm wanting to use MongoDB as like the production deployment environment database. And wonder if I can just, okay, cool. And make it so the records, the ones that need to scale, are in their own Mongo collection, and then the more general data is in one collection, and each record in that collection is scoped to a given workspace, so a given like user's data. I also want to improve the framework documentation. It currently exists at docs.jam.tools. It's a little, I want to put more code examples on there and just kind of describe what the framework is doing, and I have it all, the pipeline set up, so as I go on, it'll be more in-depth. Oops. And I also want to make it straightforward to import the framework from NPM, so it's really easy to get started on using it. So for future plans of jam tools, what I'm calling the snack system, which is it allows users to take your ideas that you programmed in your code and sort of like copy and paste them. It's like, okay, this idea is cool. I'm going to take like that small chunk and basically build your own dashboard, build your own workflow of what you want to do with MIDI. And that basically, I think that feature is needed before actually like making this in beta or something like that, just because right now it's all proof of concept as far as the features I've written, and so I think that's going to be crucial. Also, concept of MIDI over UDP, so you can write features in other programming languages and deploy your program as a sidecar, possibly bundled with the desktop app, and making it so you can keep the MIDI abstractions that macros give you and port those to another program and at runtime. And so the reason why I want to use UDP is because you can listen on named socket descriptors, and so you can treat those as MIDI devices, and then you don't fuss around with pulling the MIDI devices from the OS and opening them and all that stuff. So the whole, like, one of the main things is, like, even when you write modules with the framework, you also don't need to do that. The framework will keep track of all that stuff for you. Yeah, that's what I have as far as what I'm presenting. Is there any questions?
In one of the earlier charts, we were talking about multiplayer versus single player.
Yes, sir.
We were talking about the RPCs.
Yeah.
Are those both procedure calls?
Yes. So, wonder what yeah, thank you. That is, so if I go to previous here, so here, there's this function that is exposed by the module API called create action, which will create that behind the scenes. You'll see you have to give it a name so that the framework knows what that is across different deployments. And so the Maestro device knows what function to run. So you can see this is defined right above this UI code here, and it's being passed in as a prop or being used down below. And basically, that'll implicitly run on the correct device. And in the single player context, that'll just run on the same device immediately. So it's just sort of opaquely going to do what you want to do based on how you're deploying it. Yeah, and this pattern in particular is what made me want to pull out the MIDI stuff and make it more general purpose, because I've tried writing another application that doesn't have to do with music with this, and I was like, well, why do I have to install MIDI dependencies? I'm not doing stuff with MIDI. So pulling that stuff out, and like I guess I'm a little biased because I wrote the framework, but I would rather use this than any other framework that's available right now. Like, I mean, like, some things it won't give you right now is server-side rendering, so SEO is not really the main goal of this. It's supposed to be like a mess-around application, but yeah, it's pretty fluid. there's no like export magic or like a lot of things to learn. It's like, oh, in this file you export this name, and then you have some special stuff going on. Like ideally, you don't have to read a lot of docs to get this going. Just use TypeScript and module API dot something, and then you can see everything that's exposed. So yeah, it's important that you create the action outside of the register route callback, because that callback only runs on the front ends, because that is a React component right there. So you define the action outside of register route, and then you can use that, and it'll implicitly call that on the right device. That's such a good question. I guess this kind of cop-out answer, but what they want to exist. It's like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be cool to make this one music app? Yeah, I know how to write code. I understand MIDI, but like so much time is spent with boilerplate, like getting the MIDI devices working, polling. It's like, oh, I plugged it in and I got to restart the program because I didn't write that, or and it's just like write it once, use it other places. So, I mean, yeah, part of it is I just want to enable creative people to do what they want. And like, it's not really limited to music stuff either. Like it'd be other IoT, like smart home type stuff. Like, I mean, right now it does MIDI, but like you could make it so when I press something, it'll send, I don't know, it'll play a piano thing in the other room, or turn on the lights or something, I don't know. But yeah, it's, I mean, I guess I know what I want, and I want other people to be able to make what they want. So, yeah. Yeah. That was actually the driving factor of the last time that I worked on this, the last version. And I also got into WLED. It's an open source lighting framework. And just next door, Soundspace Recording Studio, they have these monthly open mics, and they thankfully let me do complicated setups. And I would set up these big lighting things, and I could go in detail with that stuff if you're interested, maybe afterwards. But yeah, so you can see I set this up. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's for minimal latency. You'll be on the same router. Alternatively, I'm using Cloudflare tunnels so that someone doesn't necessarily need to be on the same router. It's going to have more latency, but for those latency insensitive actions, it's reasonable. Right. Yeah. So the optimal deployment is for only one device to be doing MIDI stuff. But there's sort of like an experimental feature that makes it so you can do it locally and have like that syntax podcast example. They would want to like probably not have to host that himself, and so then you have the centralized deployment somewhere else, and then browsers can do their own MIDI stuff. MIDI as a service. Yes. Cool. So one thing that has sort of driven How I like to do jam sessions is there's no metronome, and I want to introduce a metronome eventually for like a practice mode sort of thing. But so as an alternative to metronome, you can kind of give something a heartbeat, especially if it's really quiet. That's the best. I wonder what the best way to turn that up is, because the other thing's pretty loud. And so I have it so these 2 octaves are doing leads, and this is doing chords. So basically you can just press one note. And so that's allows you to do stuff by yourself pretty well. So yeah. Yeah, it kind of gives you, it's like so the way that feature works is you can create your loop that you want to make inside of your DAW, because I didn't really want to reinvent the wheel of like determining what you want to loop, and then you export it as a MIDI file, and you import the MIDI file into the program, and it parses it, and it figures out, okay, that's one step, and so then it can loop that depending on the trigger that you want to do that with. And you can, as a developer, you can mix and match all that stuff and make it do what you want it to do. So yeah, the whole, like, one important thing here is you can write a feature and scrap it and write another feature, and they both still work. There's no, like, it's always backwards compatible. So yeah, that's where things are right now. All right, any other questions? I'm kind of curious about the UI, the web UI piece of it. Yeah. Yeah. I will preface this with I'm more a back-end developer than a front-end developer, which is, I suppose, a little dangerous if I'm making a front-end framework. But it's just so far I'm a one-person team, and getting some other people involved to help with things that I'm not so skilled at. So here's just the here's the Handraiser module page, and you can see there's this navigation, which here's all the modules that are registering routes, and then the individual routes that they're registering is below it. So you can go to the chord families page, which is basically a way to do some data entry of chord shapes that you want to use as a user. Here's a more of a centralized route. It's the macro modules page, and you can go and configure the macros for every module here. That's like the only place you can do that at the moment. But otherwise, this is like you can, like, the macros expose a component that you can render, which is how the macro module's rendering those right now. And so what I want is, like, how I have, where's the Handraiser? I can't really see. Is it on there? I don't see it. Maybe if I refresh. Do you see the word Handraiser up there? There it is. Okay. So these macros, I want these to be rendered for you at the top. Right now the module is doing that manually. But that's basically, as time goes on, I'm making it so the framework does more and more for you, so you have to think less about how your feature works and how the user will use it. So everything else in the UI is just per feature. That's pretty much what's given to you. And you get dark mode for free. Right now, this is how you can go to local mode, which now it's in that single player deployment version. So then if I change these, it won't, the hands won't move on other devices. It's just a locally managed state. So, oh yeah, one thing I wanted that I didn't fully describe about how that state works is you have to give it a name, like I was saying. Where's the good code? Okay. At least hopefully it's good. So I have these named states here, and those are scoped to the current module. So in another module, you could name the same state, and there won't be a conflict. So it basically creates a big key. And as long as you don't use vertical bars in your key name, then you won't have any trouble with that. That's a temporary solution, but that's how it, and actually you probably won't run into any issues if you do that, but that's just how I'm using the name spacing. Like, I think I should be able to, here's like you can see this key, the engine starts the first part, and then modules showing you like the data sync test module. It's creating a persistent state called shared state, and here's what the value that it currently set it to. And so it's I'm using SQLite to store each entry in a separate row, and that's just to keep it portable and performant as far as updating things. And but yeah, I definitely want to do something more purposeful like Mongo that's better for unstructured data. But this has worked just fine so far. And also, this may be a hot take, but I think if you're building an application, you don't need to focus on performance as much as you might think in the early stages. So using something like a dirty key value store is not a bad idea until you have like thousands of records of something. So yeah, exactly. Because, you know, a lot of, especially hobby programs, they don't really see the light of day. And you spend so much time trying to get your schema right. And it's like, oh, I got to do a migration because I messed it up. It's like, this is all the states created on the fly. So you don't really need to think about how it's stored or if you're doing it right on day one, which is another reason why I did it this way, because I don't know what this is what my application code is going to look like, or what my data model for my app is going to look like in the next month or something. So it helps you get off the ground really quickly. So if you take away the MIDI stuff, you still get all that stuff. You get all the shared state, all the persistent state. So I feel like a framework usually doesn't reach into the data layer for you that way. Like even Rails, you know, it has a ORM, but you're still using your own database schema. You have to design that stuff. So this is like, you don't even have to do that. Like, just give it your atoms, you can think of it as that, and it'll put it in a database for you. So yeah, I think I guess I wasn't really satisfied with the available solutions. Like a very popular framework now is Next.js. It's very server-side focused, whereas I'm wanting a more of a client-side approach. There's another one that's coming out. If you're familiar with TanStack, there's TanStack Start. I'm actually thinking about maybe seeing if I can build on top of that. It's it's like uses a bunch of TANstack stuff, and its paradigms are pretty similar to what I'm doing. So I'm just wondering if I could get the data layer stuff in there and the module-based approach. But yeah, I would be really thankful if somebody here or online would be curious enough to test out whatever application idea they want with this. Just, sometimes you create a new project just to test out a technology. So if maybe not, the docs aren't there yet, so a little bit of reverse engineering of reading my feature level code, but yeah, I very much plan to continue improving this and keeping it going, so it's not going anywhere.
So next month we can get text over.
Yeah. Yep.
So final question, how do you use it to do a jam session?
Yes. So yeah, we actually used it at my friend's bachelor's party, if that says anything about my friend group. So we had a jam session for his bachelor's party. It went pretty well. The UI for it is for that feature right now it was kind of rushed. I was finishing it like right before we were playing, but I know that the framework is ready for that. So I guess since that is the main purpose of it, that's a good thing to clarify. Yeah, and it worked. There were some like what would be really useful at the time is if it was packaged as a desktop app, so I could easily like change which computer I was using as the core thing, just because of the way we had the cords, the wires and stuff in the room. And even though I built this for that reason, I'm really trying to like pivot and start making other products for it that people might want other than people that are doing jam sessions and stuff. So both in the music space and the non-music space. So thank you.